But it was dry. Whatever didn't destroy enough of the lights that I was powering out, so I just assumed it was dead. So when because I had to reach into my own car, I hit my finger like this, and it went through my whole I couldn't believe it.
Okay, we're back up and running. All right. Whenever you're ready. All right, well, let's.
All right, everybody. That's the raw shift crowd. All right, everybody. So we'll get started for our packed house meeting tonight. For those watching at home, it's a good thing you stayed home. There's not an empty chair available in the room. So tonight we're gonna get going right away. We have Brian Shields with us this evening. Brian is the Director of Utilities. So Brian is in charge of everything, water and sewer, engineering as well. And so Brian's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the flooding events that we've had recently and what's going on with the city's infrastructure and a lot more than that. So I'll turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Anthony.
You're welcome.
See on the first slide, I'm not Julie Barnes, my assistant director. I'm filling in for her though, but I'm using her presentation because it's the one that was given at the City Commission workshop just a week and a half ago. After one of the major flooding events we experienced, and I believe it was October 26th. That event was really impacts from Hurricane Zeta, which was located far from us. It gave us during that period of time over 8 inches of rain just in one evening. In the course of that week, we probably had a good 20 inches of rain. Approaching the 100-year flood event. We explain what a 100-year flood event means. The chance of that happening are 1 over 100 in a given time. It also occurred with a coincidence of king tide. So we experienced a lot of stormwater drainage issues as well as sanitary sewer overflows based on the sheer volume of water coming down the saturated ground and the king tide happening at the same time. Just as an FYI, our systems are designed, our stormwater systems are designed to handle what's called 3-year storm. It's given the fact that we had approximately a 100-year event, obviously our systems were overwhelmed. Now, how do we deal with these issues and how we have been dealing with them? Mitigation measures. We have been putting in tide valves, and what tide valves do is keep the high tide as much as possible from backing up into the streets into the stormwater drainage system. So those tide check valves, we put at least 1 or 2 in every year. We have an ongoing program to install those at key points where we know there's serious flooding taking place due to king tides. Now, what that does, it mitigates the amount of flooding and the length of flooding. It doesn't stop them all. There's going to be king tides that come up higher than what the systems are designed for, higher than the seawalls. We can't compensate for that. But what we can do is reduce the frequency of flooding during king tide events. From approximately, usually once a month during high tide, we can bring that down to hopefully 1 or 2 times per year, which is a good improvement. So we've been working on those for our worst areas. And as I mentioned, the stormwater system is designed to take 3-year events. And when it does get overwhelmed like that, it takes time to drain off. But keeping in mind that it did drain off in a day, and the way we design systems is it should drain off in 3 days at worst. Okay, recent projects, as I mentioned, we've been putting in the tide check valves. As part of the neighborhood road program, we've been accomplishing drainage improvements that were recommended in the drainage master plan of 2016. And we have completed some work, some in all 4 districts actually. Through District 3, where we are right now, we've done the Duke and Holy Cross area, Georgia Lane and Furman, and North Lakeside as part of the neighborhood road program. So we did accomplish master plan improvement projects in those particular areas. As part of those projects, we were able to get it done at the same time in conjunction with the paving projects. other projects throughout the city taking place right now, Park of Commerce, for example. And we have what's called the Adopt a Drain program, where Judy Love, our water and storms manager, is working with the local schools, and the school children will actually be going out painting stencils on stormwater inlets to let people know that, do not dump down here. This water goes out to the intracoastal, it's a protected water body. Do not dump down the drain. So the kids are really going to be helpful, and they're very excited to take that.
My son's one of them.
There you go.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, the Stormwater Master Plan, originally done in 2012, was updated in 2016, that identified the historical flooding areas, used computer modeling of the system to see where we needed improvements to take place, as well as water quality improvements. The focus of that report was not just flooding, it was also nutrients and solid deposition into the intracoastal waterway, which is a protected body, as I mentioned. And in future, the city will be limited to how much we can discharge as far as pollutants go. So part of our strategy is also to put what we call baffle boxes in where we put the tide valves. And those don't stop, but they reduce the amount of nutrients being discharged into the water body. We continue to pursue grants. Stormwater is very difficult to fund these types of projects. So we do have an ongoing 20-year program in the master plan that are identified, which includes some large projects. For example, underground storage at Bryant Park to help reduce that flooding that takes place in the parking lot at Bryant Park routinely. Where we are right now on the golf course, we're looking to increase the lake size and create detention areas on the golf course to assist this area, Parrot Cove and College Park. And then, as I mentioned, we do look to pursue grants and look for legislative funding. So our state legislator that's up in Tallahassee, we rely on him each year to get in and try to push to get us some stormwater funding. We've been successful in getting a little bit here and there, and we haven't been successful getting on the priority list, but the money is few and far between. So we really don't get the amount that should be dedicated to the stormwater project. As I mentioned, our stormwater master plan lays out a 20-year program of projects. This basically summarizes and shows you the projects we've completed already, or partially completed, which is still under construction. And that takes us through a number of water quality improvements, as well as some flooding projects that we got. Here, Steve, my administrative assistant has just arrived. Thank you for setting up the computer, Ernest. So all in all, on the stormwater side, we are looking at about $21 million worth of necessary improvements that are needed over the next 20 years. So we'll be pursuing funding, as we always do every year. We apply for a lot of grant funding. Now, at the same time, the stormwater system was overwhelmed by all that rainfall. Such was the sanitary sewer system, because it also responded to that rainfall by what's called infiltration and inflow. And infiltration and inflow is groundwater, stormwater, rainwater directly running in through roof drains that are illegally connected, connections to manholes, leakage at manholes, leakage at gravity sewer laterals, et cetera, et cetera. That water gets in the pipes. It's not intended to convey stormwater. It's intended to convey sanitary sewage. So with that event, we did have experience a number of sewage backups. This just gives you an overview of the sub-regional system, which comes down into basically there's a lift station here on the golf course, and lift station 4, and that takes the north end of the city and pumps it to Bryant Park. Bryant Park, that collects everything from the south end of the city as well as the remainder of the city, including all of our partners. We have 8 separate partners in adjoining municipalities. They all pump their wastewater to us. It all eventually gets to Bryant Park. And then we have a large force main that pumps up essentially Haverhill Road all the way up to the ECR facility in West Palm Beach where it's treated. So you can see we've got quite an extensive, a lot of wastewater from our neighbors as well as the city itself. Yeah, as I mentioned, some of the problems with sanitary sewer and rainwater are infiltration and inflow, which is water that's getting into the sewer system that does not belong there. It should be in the stormwater system, not sanitary sewer. But the combination of king tides, heavy rains, high groundwater, saturated ground contributed to our problem during these events. How do we solve these problems or mitigate them? It's called pure place liners. We have a routine process of lining our sanitary sewers. We TV inspect quite frequently to identify the worst areas, so worst first, and And then we have an annual program where we do get in and put in what's called a cured in place liner. That essentially creates a pipe within the pipe. You've got a brand new pipe formed inside the existing pipe, so you don't have to dig up the street and cause a lot of damage to the surface or the roadway pavement. It's done from within with robotic instruments and television cameras. So that's our main strategy on that. Also looking at manholes themselves, lining manholes which are in poor condition with leakage, putting in inserts into our manhole covers, because rainwater, once fill up with stormwater, the rainwater actually pours into the sanitary sewers. So we have an ongoing program, and we've done hundreds of these where we put these liners, insert liners into sanitary channels to keep the rainwater out. So this is an ongoing problem, and as I mentioned, will take place every year. We've got budget for this, so budget is not an issue on the Cured in Place liner project, other than the larger collection systems, which I'll get to in our capital improvements. This graph just depicts what happened during that October event, that weekend. These are the line here, the trend line is, this is what our normal wastewater flows are being done in the master pump station up to West Palm Beach. Look what happened on that day. We more than doubled the flow that we normally pump up to West Palm Beach. And interestingly, the master pump station had the capacity to handle that amount of flow, and did without overflowing. But some of the local collection systems getting to the master pump station were overwhelmed. So we did have raw sewage bubbling about certain manholes. There were maybe one or two within the Parrot Cove area, but primarily down in South Palm Park and further upstream up in College Park. And another indication of what happened on that storm event, these are flows from our partners. We meter all the flow from the surrounding cities that comes into the master that we pump up to West Palm Beach. And again, you can see those spikes taking place in those huge rain events. They had the same problems we had, in that their systems were getting overwhelmed with stormwater getting into the sanitary system. So they were pumping to us like crazy. So again, how do we deal with this cured in place lining? Ongoing program. We've got that going. As I mentioned before, inflows, we've done over 3,000 manhole inflow inserts to manholes throughout the city. And then we continuously do gravity sewer collection assessment, which means TV cameras are inserted into the lines to check their condition. We do that on a routine basis, and then we want to tackle the worst first. So future projects, again, ongoing, annual program for I&I improvement. We hope to line 10 miles per year. We're continuously inspecting. We found some issues along Lakeside, pretty much in the Bryant Park area. We have a large interceptor sewer that takes our sewage as well as that from our partners. That's a 36-inch line that needs to be lined, and that's in our capital improvements that I'll get to. Future slide, which is the next slide, actually. So we're looking at, in the near term, capital improvements, about $5 million on the sanitary sewer system. Not quite as extensive as what's needed on the stormwater system. And this is essentially funded because the underlying highlighted projects are sub-regional, so our partners assist us in funding those. So we fund a certain portion of that, but all of our surrounding cities pay their fair share of those projects. The other ones you'll see, they're just cleaning, inspecting, and lining. Again, roughly $5 million. And with our current borrowing that's taking place in the utility bond, as well as the next tranche of borrowing, 2 or 3 years from now, this will be funded. So not as big an issue as far as funding the sewer system goes, but again, it is quite an ongoing task. With that, filling in for Julie Parham, my assistant director, I'm willing to take some questions. Anthony, you have some questions?
Yes, we have some questions. Let us know if any come in there. Yeah, we've had some questions that were sent in, so let me just get to them.
You missed that one.
Okay, so let's read the whole question comment. What is going on with the almost daily bleeding of the fire hydrants? I know it's going on in Eden Place as well. The one on 13th and North Lakeside has been gushing for 4 to 6 weeks at least already. Potable water is in enormous quantities being added to the drains, which are already overburdened with king tide and off the charts rainfall in the past month alone. I also remember getting a $600 bill when our water main broke and gushed for maybe 2.5 hours. Would like to hear an explanation on what's going on.
Sure, we routinely flush the water main system. That's a water quality issue. We have to maintain chlorine residual, which keeps bacteria and virus from growing within the water main system. So we do flush to keep those residuals up. We have some spots in the system that are known as dead ends, and those dead ends that have not yet been tied in and looped actually have a tendency with our hot weather to reduce the chlorine concentration, like your swimming pool, for example, same thing. Your pool, if you left it out in the hot sunlight, your chlorine residual would dissipate and you have to add more chlorine. So we've got to do that in the water main system. And in order to keep the chlorine residual up to where it should be by law, we have to flush. Now, we've been flushing more than normal because of a lot of water main breaks in the system due to the ongoing construction, as well as we did this year. So we normally do twice a year what's called a free chlorine burn, where we take, rather than combined chlorine, which we use year-round, we go to free potent chlorination, which is similar to shocking your swimming pool. And we do that twice a year. This year, we did not get the chance to do that this summer due to COVID issues, but we do have it scheduled for this right after Thanksgiving. As a matter of fact, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, we should be starting our annual free burn, or semi-annual, but this year we're only doing it one time. Once that takes place, that will really boost up the chlorine residuals within our system, and you will not see as much flushing once that takes place. Until again, we get into that cycle around 6 months later down the road, the residuals start to decrease, and we need to do more flushing. So it's a routine pipeline maintenance effort.
I've seen the flushing go on in up in College Park. And I always thought it's because that's the end of the line, but I'm assuming there's dead end points then throughout. That's why there's Parrot Cove ones happening.
You're correct. Like College Park, for example, the end of Wellesley, the end of Notre Dame, et cetera. Those are dead ends, so they tend to lose their chlorine residual faster than the rest of the system. But if you do notice around town and in the other flushing locations, same situation. We've got dead ends that are not looped. When the system was originally designed and built, it should have been a looped system, but it wasn't. There's some missing links here and there, but that's an ongoing water main improvement project, and we are taking care of it.
So it's going to be looped?
Yes.
Big undertaking.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. We've replaced almost all of the 2-inch lines in the city, and at the same time we do those, we accomplish looping.
Then just a couple of general questions. You mentioned king tides earlier. I know a lot of people are familiar with them. How often and how many times a year do we have king tides?
Usually the king tides are in the fall, generally October, November. We're in that season right now. In fact, we've got one more king tide to get through, which just means an extreme high tide. I mean, high tides come every month with the moon, full moon. But during this time of year, due to the Earth's location and the moon, you get even more extreme high tides. So that's what's known as the king tide. And those can actually overtop the seawalls.
All right, I got one from the chat here. Is there any plans to work on street drainage on the older roads that aren't getting redone?
There are, if they fall within that list that I showed of the master plan projects over a 20-year period, there are some that are not included in the road program. The reason we try to do them at the same time, it's a worst first situation, and do it once, do it right is the mantra. So when we get an opportunity with a road job, we'll accomplish stormwater work at the same time. But there are streets, to that point, yes, there are roads in the city that are not on the neighborhood road program that will ultimately get some street drainage improvement.
Okay, awesome.
Check and see if there's any audio questions.
Commissioner Maxwell has joined us.
Commissioner Maxwell, do you have any questions?
Yeah, he's seen the presentation. Julie gave it at the commission workshop.
During the rain episodes and obviously high tides, it doesn't matter if it's king tide or not, but as it rains from A Street east, it just runs down, runs in and goes to the outfall, actually at the end of Second Avenue, I guess, is one right before the golf course. that area floods. It doesn't even have to be a king tide, it's a rain, high tide event.
Yeah, that's a high tide situation. As I mentioned, Ryan Park, and the solution to that is on our master plan, ultimately, to put in more retention at Ryan Park. That's a larger scale project, and again, funding is limited, so.
Well, I mean, that corner is like a retention. Right.
Yeah, that's true, but that's where we would like to create actually, man-made retention rather
Some
than
kind
have
of-
it pile up in the parking lot and put it where it's supposed to go. And the same goes here on the golf course for, Eden Place and Parrot Cove, College Park, et cetera. We'd like to put additional retention here in the golf course, as I mentioned.
We get a hard time on our street.
Yeah, you're right, though. Everything in the city drains to the intracoastal from the west, from the ridge, so just
You see
natural
it coming
topography.
out of the drain on the street.
Because everything gets.
Oh, yeah.
It goes away pretty quickly.
Yeah, I see it.
I've noticed when that's taking place and the streets fill up, you actually see bubbles coming out of the street itself. Is that just the road degrading because of the water going through it and displacing the
It's
sand
actually
underneath, or is
the
that something?
reverse. It's actually groundwater. During that event on the 26th, like 18th South, for example, you could literally see the groundwater bubbling up between the curb and the edge and the sidewalk and the curb line. It's really amazing to see, but that water literally just bubbling up right out of there. So much pressure built up between the king tide and the amount of rainfall coming down at the same time.
Interesting. Anecdotally, are you seeing the effects worsen each year, or is it cyclical? I realize it takes many years to make a trend,
Yeah.
but over the years, are you seeing that, or is it just kind
Well,
of?
it is cyclical, but I would say, yes, it's getting slightly worse, and it is projected to get even more worse in the future. If you saw, there was a presentation at that commission workshop given by the multi-regional partners, and they're looking at a tri-county effort, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. They're looking at sea level rise and future mitigation efforts. So there's a study underway to basically determine where everyone's vulnerable and what's the best approach to try to mitigate future sea level rise, which is unpredictable, but the Corps of Engineers has, 3 different models run, low, medium, and high. And right now, everyone's basing their modeling on the medium Corps of Engineers prediction. But that presentation, which was given, and Commissioner Maxwell saw that one, did show, some striking future trends which are not good, as well as being along the coastline.
Anything on that?
Nothing else.
You mentioned a few different pump stations around, and then the major one, I think you said, goes through a 3-foot diameter line up Haverhill. I'm assuming that goes up to West Palm, to this treatment facility out there by Roebuck.
Yes.
I'm just curious if that pump gave out, there'd be a real problem there. It hasn't, and I'm sure no one wants it to. So I'm wondering what is in place to make sure that that thing never
So
stops.
there are actually 4, there's a lot of redundancy there. 4 pumps, okay? Each one can handle the flow, as I showed on the graph.
I'll teach him what a quadplex system is after the meeting.
It's
I know
actually,
the redundancy.
yeah, it's a
Quadruplex here.
It's a quadruplex station, so there's 4 pumps, 4 huge pumps in there that can handle the flow. As I showed on the graph, even though we doubled our normal production from that pump station, it was handled without an issue at the master pump station. So there's 4 pumps there. There's backup power. There's two power feeds in case one goes down, it lies on the second one. If they both fail, then there's a generator. If the generator fails, then we've got a bypass hydraulic pump put in place. Just recently, we added that. So we've got 4 levels of redundancy at that pump station to make sure it keeps operating under the worst of possible conditions. Now, all else fails, we have a pipe that goes to the ocean, and that's the absolute last resort. If there was complete failure of the system or a break in the line heading up to West Palm Beach, we would have to go to the ocean, and we can. We have an outflow pipe that's a mile out into the ocean.
So rather than dump it into all the neighborhoods.
Yes, exactly right.
The least worst case.
Yeah, that's
If
correct.
you want to volunteer, we'll put the pipe into your house.
Yeah.
Right in your swimming pool.
Yeah.
That's the original outfall that they had out in the ocean.
Still there,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's taken it.
still functions.
The pipe replacement, the potable water
Okay.
replacement, How much is left to go with that to get rid of all your
We have
pipes?
2 more years to go on the 2-inch steel replacement project. We finished years 1 through 4. We've got years 5 and 6 to go through. We're just waiting to bid that project probably in January or so. As I mentioned, we've got a utility bond being floated as part of the utility bond funds that program, as well as these hydraulic improvements I mentioned for looping that we accomplish as part of the neighborhood road program.
The 2-inch, what is it? Not cast iron.
It's galvanized steel.
Oh, galvanized steel, okay. What is it being replaced with, 3-inch PVC? Or is it staying?
4-inch,
4-inch.
4-inch minimum, yeah, PVC. In general, some areas we use ductile iron where heavy traffic loads, but in general, it's 99% PVC.
So when that's done, will every piece of the city so every house will have PVC from when it leaves the plant?
Yeah, that's correct. Every stick of 2-inch that we know of will be replaced. Certainly in the future, there may be some unknown piece here there. We'll find as if there's a break. But
as a city engineer.
in my role as the city engineer, as Anthony knows, I also attend the site plan review team meetings and represent the city at the planning and zoning board if any engineering issues come up, traffic issues, et cetera. But yes, I'm also overseeing what's happening in the Park of Commerce with Belleville Road, 2nd Avenue, 4th Avenue, and 7th Avenue, all those improvements that are currently under construction. And then the neighborhood road program, we're into the final year of that program. We're almost done. We've got one more segment to do, District and District 2. 3 and 4 are essentially, 4 is complete, totally completed. And District 3 is just wrapping up as we speak on the final section, doing some roadway overlays in District 3. And that'll be it for the neighborhood road program. Should be done just slightly under budget and a year behind schedule due to funding issues, but we'll get it done this coming year.
That's good. I will say, and yes, as Brian stated, he does do our planning and zoning meetings. And every single time it's the same, Brian sits back, listens, and then when we get stopped and stumped, then he just stands up, comes in about 30 seconds, gives us all the technical answers that ever needed, and then sits back down. And incredibly efficient and helpful. And it's always the same thing. It comes up, no, this is how it goes. And then we all know what's going on and he heads back down. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy those meetings. They're very interesting.
It's very kind of you.
They can be very interesting. Pat?
The solar farm, is that finished or is it going to be added on to?
Well, that's electric utilities bailiwick. However, that's the first phase of 4, potentially. I don't know what Ed's plans are as far as expanding the solar field, but that is the complete phase 1 of the solar field at the former landfill. So that functions. I mean, that's operating as we speak.
Yeah, I was just curious, how the additions to it are coming.
Mike can expand.
Yeah, just to add to that, the city is actually into partnerships through FMPA, the Florida Municipal Power Association, on 2 large-scale solar projects elsewhere in the state. So we get Nuke from St. Lucie and power from Orlando through Orlando utilities. We're also going to be partnering on these large solar installations, such that by 2023, cheap electric for these large solar installations, it's just too low for us to pass up. So we are getting solar. You do own solar, yes, because you own electric utility, just like you do water utility. How's the RO plant doing? A lot of people don't know we have an RO.
The RO plant is doing fine. The water plant is in very good shape. As I mentioned before, we're replacing a lot of that steel pipe and hydraulic looping, but the plant itself is in really fine condition. In 2012, a reverse osmosis treatment system was added at the water plant, and we have plenty of excess capacity, and we have, again, a lot of redundancy there, safety features built in, and we have very high quality water, some of the best around.
And they are being reverse osmosis.
Reverse osmosis.
Since you bring up drinking water, if I may capitalize on this. I've noticed when I go either Orlando or the west of Florida, the water like smells and feels different, almost minerally. What caused that? Is that because
It's the source.
where it's pulling from?
Yes, whatever source of water any utility is using kind of dictates what the water tastes like, color, odor, et cetera. It all varies throughout the state. I mean, South official, and that water is highly organic, highly colored. Membrane treatment to remove the color and the taste. But in Lake Worth Beach, for example, we're using reverse osmosis, which even takes it to another level of quality and clarity.
So when all the pipe replacement is finished, is there any need?
No, not at all. The only potential that somebody could have their own individual problem is between the meter and the house. You could have a bad service line, which could get rusty and needs replacement. Again, that's a homeowner's responsibility. To the meter, there's absolutely no reason to have any filtration or additional treatment on top of what we do.
So even if you did have filtration at the meter, you're still running it through bad lines.
Oh, you put it under your kitchen sink in general.
For drinking water, like the whole house ones, for
Yeah.
hair changing from blonde to.
Right. Once our pipe.
I like anything else. This question is bottled water. There was a question popped up. I'm not sure that if you can address this. They said they were happy to see some bumps on North Lake side. Any chance North Palm Way or North Ocean Breeze will get some bumps?
Well, I'll have to check the actual.
I don't know where this be. I don't know.
Yeah, I would have to check the neighborhood road program.
Speed bumps on North Lakeside Drive.
I know they just finished section. They redid the bump outs at 10th. They're not these raggedy.
Maybe somebody's driving over those.
Stop at the second barrel. 1 and 4.
I can still get to 50 before then.
Well, thank you.
Right. Fourth got them for all streets. They put one on Lakeside, Palm Way,
Yeah.
and Ocean Street, all across there.
regulated.
Right. Which
We can try.
mostly helps. And I did speak to Jamie Brown specifically on that one. We requested, and we asked him and just said, "You're the expert looking for traffic calming of some sort." And he said that given those areas, that the stop signs were the best rather than speed bumps
It does work.
for those areas. The one by my house, I'd say maybe 75% of people come mostly to a stop. So a few just keep going.
Well, we were at second, so by the time people got there, they were going at such a speed. So they kind of go,
And these typically are people who live in the neighborhoods going, but they're generally people shortcutting and going around.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you.
Go over a couple of quick things here for our audience at home.
You gotta pull that off. You want people to hear you.
But I'd be breaking the COVID rule. Here, we'll do this. No, here we go. I'm sitting, so it's okay now. All right, so we have a couple announcements. We won't have another regular meeting until January because our December meeting's not a regular meeting. From last meeting, we announced there's going to be no social events for the foreseeable future, so we covered that. We do have one announcement here from our friend Lindy. Let's see what we have here. So they're going to be assembling 2,500 boxes for Thanksgiving. Percentage of the boxes will be distributed via Commissioner Andy Amoroso to Lake Worth Beach families. So the point of contact for this is going to be lindy.seto@gmail.com, and that's spelled LINDY.SETO@gmail.com. So this is in partnership with Buchan Provisions, the restaurant group here, and the initiative is led by Jen Bell, who lives in Lake Worth Beach, and her husband is the executive chef at Grotto. So I think they have a few different restaurants in that group there. So the dates we have here are November 17th, 18th, and 19th. They're collecting from 9 to 12 and from 12 to 3. And it's at the City of Lake Worth Warehouse, which is at 1900 2nd Avenue North.
So that's the building department, correct, that address? So the building department, go west on Lake Worth Road, a couple of blocks past the plaza, make a right. It's back in there. Or just do what everybody does these days, just put it in your mapping app. Let's see. Oh, yard decorating contest. This, I believe the city is doing this one again, right? Just like the Halloween one?
Yes.
I do have some details here. Okay, so this comes from the City of Lake Worth Beach Leisure Services Department. Since the Halloween yard decorating contest was so successful, we'd like to do it again for the holidays. They have 5 categories for suggestions. They'd like to narrow it down to 3. So we're going to be sending this out to all of our members to vote on the top 3, I guess. Naughty or nice, who came up with that one. Mickey and Friends Home for the Holidays, because that's where we'll all be stuck, because we're not going anywhere this year for the holidays. Winter Wonderland, the North Pole, and Light Up the Neighborhood. So we'll be collecting some responses on that from the folks in the neighborhood. And that's pretty much all I have. Not a whole lot going on. Commissioner Maxwell in the back. Yes, sir.
Saturday, we're giving away 1,200 turkeys
This Saturday, giving away 1,200 turkeys.
and 1,200 bags.
Where is that taking place?
Well, you can buy voucher only, but we need volunteers.
I'm sorry.
It's by voucher only.
Oh, by voucher only.
We need volunteers to help create the boxes.
Okay.
Tuesday, Thursday,
So we're looking for volunteers
Tuesday, Thursday.
this Tuesday. Is it tomorrow?
I'm sorry, Thursday, Friday.
This Thursday? This Thursday and Friday. So if you'd like to volunteer to assist with this worthwhile cause, send an email to Parrot Cove and we'll get you in touch. Or unless there's another contact email.
Cheryl has them.
Okay, so Parrot Cove 097
Cheryl has them.
@gmail.com. Oh, Cheryl Rashkin? She's the point on it?
She's scheduled.
Okay, just send them to us on Parrot Cove and we'll forward them to Cheryl. I don't have to look up her information.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else that anyone wants to add? Nope, that's it.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, we have been doing a great job. We appreciate that.